Hey guys, Michael Hyatt here. Thanks for watching the replay of this live broadcast. My name is Michael Hyatt, and this is the Virtual Mentor Show, where my goal is to give you the clarity, the confidence, and the tools that you need to win at work and to succeed at life. And by the way, if you're watching this as a replay, you can still show the love by tapping on the screen to give me hearts. Great to see you guys. I hope you had a great weekend. In case you're new here, this is your first time, my name is Michael Hyatt. I'm the New York Times best-selling author of the book Platform, Get Noticed in a Noisy World. I also blog at michaelhyatt.com where I get about 1 million page views a month. My podcast is called This Is Your Life. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher. It's usually in the top 10 of the self-help category. And I've been married to my lovely wife, Gail, for 37 years. Together we have 5 daughters, 8 grandchildren, and we live just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. So today I'm going to be talking about the surprising power of the one conversation rule. So if you want to look at the blog post, which I just put up this morning, you can go to the mentor, as in virtual mentor, thementor.tv, conversation 1, the numeral 1, thementor.tv/conversation 1. And so somebody says, mine's the only one that's sideways. You need to update to the new Periscope app if you haven't done that yet. That was released last week. It makes possible landscape mode. So if you're seeing the contents run the opposite direction from my face so it seems kind of screwed up, it's probably because you haven't updated, or if you did update, you might need to restart your phone. Regardless, I'd be so grateful if before I get into the content today, if you would just swipe the screen left to right or bottom to top and share this with your followers, just like Simon E. Phoenix did, share it on Twitter. Fantastic. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, the site, by the way, was thementor.tv/conversation1. Maybe somebody could put that in the links. Alan, thanks for sharing that on Twitter. Kevin, thanks for inviting your followers. Director CSS shared on Twitter. The Grom Mom shared on Twitter. Jenny shared it on Twitter. Thanks, guys. That really helps to get the word out. So grateful that you guys are doing that. Okay, I know you've been commenting and telling me where you were from, but I was so busy doing my spiel that I didn't catch it. So tell me, hey Niels, tell me where you're from. Tell me who you are, all caps, your name, and then where you're from. I'd love to hear it. Somebody said, so confused how to do that. Do what? Get the landscape to work? And by the way, I would do this. Even if you've updated, from your side, hold the phone in portrait mode. I'll still be in landscape, but I'll be at the top. Hey, Shelley from Colorado Springs. But the comments won't roll over my face. So you watch it in portrait mode. Weston, Dallas. Aaron from California. Laura from Bangor, Maine. Gail and I were in Maine this summer for a month almost and loved it. Aaron from San Antonio. Brendan from Nashville. Jacqueline from Northwest England. Ralph from California, Richard from Alabama, Hay from Montreal, Steph from Glasgow, Scotland, Pam from upstate New York. I was in New York over the weekend, not upstate New York, but I was in the city, actually White Plains. Christine in Utah, Philip from Chattanooga, Louisville, Kentucky, Bend, Oregon, been there too, fantastic. Iowa, I grew up in Nebraska, so, cousins. Amanda from San Diego, Rusty from Columbia, South Carolina. Sarah, hi Michael Hyatt, happy Monday. Hey to you, Sarah. Marcia, Christy from Idaho, fantastic. So again, if you guys don't know me, if it's your first time here or you just joined, my name is Michael Hyatt. This show is called the Virtual Mentor Show, and my goal is to give you the clarity, we all need that, right? The confidence, and if you're an entrepreneur, this is especially important, and the tools so that you can win at work and succeed at life. I have a fundamental premise about that, by the way, that you can't win at the one without succeeding at the other. It just is not sustainable. You can't win at work and let your health go to pot or your family go down the drain and ultimately win at work. They cascade into one another. So let's get into the content. I'm going to talk about this whole idea of the one conversation rule, and I'm going to talk here for about probably 15 minutes, and then I'll take your questions. And this, I really think, is a topic that if you'll practice it, and I double dog dare you to practice it, but if you'll practice it, this can be a game changer for your family, and it can be a game changer for work. And I'm going to give you 2 illustrations of how this works. So a number of years ago, I was invited over to a friend of mine's home, Lucy Swindoll in Dallas, Texas. And there were probably about 12 of us. And at the very beginning, Lucy stood up and she hit her glass with her fork, getting everybody's attention. You know how that kind of chimes. And she said, "Look, I'm so glad you all are here. Welcome to my home. I'm delighted to have you. I think we've got an amazing evening planned for you. But I only have one rule, and the rule is this, that we have to have one conversation." She said, "I don't really care what we talk about. I've got some questions to kick it off, but just one conversation, no side conversations, just one conversation so that we can all hear and that we can all participate." I want to tell you, that was one of the most amazing nights of my life. I got to know people that I wouldn't have known otherwise. I got to talk about topics and go deep into topics that I wouldn't have in the kind of superficial dinner conversation that typically happens. So we started practicing that at home with my daughters and with whomever came over. And now, even when we have other couples over, we do the same thing. Usually I'll say at the very beginning. In fact, I just had a bunch of new media people over, some leaders in my industry over the other night for dinner. And I said, "Hey guys, just one rule. So thankful that you're here. We're going to have a great time together, but just one rule, and that is one conversation." And again, we just had an amazing time together. So what we typically do when we do this is we come up with a couple of questions beforehand. Gail and I think, based on who's going to be at dinner or maybe what's happening in our lives or the life of the family, we ask a couple of questions. We usually don't need more than about 2 or 3. We establish the one conversation rule, and then we just throw it open for discussion. And I'm going to give you some very practical tips that I didn't give in today's blog post. And again, you can find that at thementor.tv / what was it? Conversation 1, numeral 1, conversation 1. You can also just go to michaelhyatt.com, and it's the top article today. It's going to roll off the top tomorrow when we have something new out, but it's at the top today. Okay? So another example. We were at our strategic planning retreat with my company. My company's called Intentional Leadership. And we were doing a strategic planning retreat about 3 weeks ago. We rented this beautiful home in the country just outside of Nashville here in the rolling hills of Tennessee. It was fantastic. And at night, I established the one conversation rule, and then we had these incredible conversations with our teammates. And I didn't always even start the conversations. One night, Julie Cannon, who's the wife of our chief marketing officer, she just asked a question about marriage, and it led to this phenomenal discussion. But again, the rule is only one conversation. It's not important what the conversation is. Well, it is important, but the most important thing is that you have one conversation. And what I want to do is give you some reasons, let me get my notes here, that I gave today on my blog. Sort of the 6 benefits of following the one conversation rule, okay? So number one benefit of following the one conversation rule is this, is that it gives everyone a chance to be heard. How many of you are introverts? If you're an introvert, say yes in the comments. Give me your name and say yes. Yeah, Emily, now I want to read this post. That's the idea. Blue Lion says kinda. Emily says yes. Eric says yes. Oh yes, lots of introverts. My tribe. Randy, yes. Vern, yes, yes, at times. Okay. I'm a little bit borderline. Some people call that an omnivert. Laura, yes. Steph, an outgoing introvert. Okay, I have to think about that one for a minute. Yes. Yeah, I'm formally shy, but an extrovert. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of people think I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. I'm an introvert. And it really has to do with 2 things. It doesn't have anything to do with how good you are with the crowd. Like I think I'm pretty good in a room and I'm pretty outgoing, but it really has to do with 2 things. Where do I go to recharge? Do I go to a group of people? Does that recharge me? Am I energized by that? Or am I energized when I'm alone, when I'm by myself? And the second thing that it involves is the amount of stimulus or noise that you can handle. Like put me in a restaurant that's noisy and I can't barely hear, drives me crazy. You know, just shoot me. It's really, really hard. But some people love that. Some people love, you know, the music playing and all the noise and people talking. Not me. That doesn't help me. Niels says me too. Somebody else said I'm energized by people. By the way, I have to say this. Nothing's right or wrong. But the problem is, if you ever notice this at a dinner table, you're trying to have dinner, and sometimes they can't help it. The extroverts take over. They just talk. They've always got something to say. And the introverts are just kind of quiet. And they feel a little bit edged out. The one conversation rule balances all that out. It draws the extroverts in, kind of reels them in a little bit, and it gives the opportunity for the introverts to talk. So it draws them out. So everybody has a voice at the table. So that's the first benefit, is that it gives everyone a chance to be heard. Second benefit is that it validates and honors everyone. One of the things I've noticed in groups, and I noticed this when I was the CEO at Thomas Nelson, is that sometimes we would have an executive committee meeting where there would be about 10 of my direct reports. Sometimes people that had the most to say were the most quiet. Sometimes the people that had the most insight into the situations we were confronting as a company, the most helpful advice, were the ones that weren't particularly forthcoming with it. They held back, while sometimes the extroverts took over. The thing about the one conversation rule is that it honors everybody. It says that everybody is equally valuable, and it validates them. Because as the leader of the table, if you're going to start the conversation, you can affirm those people for their comments. You can draw them out, you can affirm them, you can fold what they have to say into the larger conversation, and it makes a huge difference. Sarah, thank you for capturing these thoughts as well. So that's the second benefit. Vernon says, I think your orientation switched. I'm assuming you mean landscape or portrait. Actually, it's the same for me. It might have switched for you, depending on how you're holding your phone. Look, it's probably not you guys. It's probably Periscope. I know it's got some bugs, but I am broadcasting this in a landscape mode. So again, you got to download the new app. You might have to reboot your phone to make it useful. And then I would encourage you to hold the phone in portrait mode so that I'm at the top in landscape and below me are all these comments. Emily says, if you're an introvert, how would you suggest leading these conversations? I struggle with that. Emily, all you got to do, this is the cool thing. In fact, let me just keep going. And if I don't get to your question, I want you to come back to it, but I think I'm going to cover it. So number 3, this is the third benefit, is that it sets the stage for real connection. And here's why. When there's one conversation, when you're asking the right questions, you're going to go deeper. People are going to be more vulnerable. They're going to be more authentic. They're going to share more of themselves. And that's the foundation for connection. And so that's really the third benefit. It provides the foundation for connection. Okay? Fourth benefit is that it develops your listening skills. As it turns out, the secret to connecting, the secret to leading powerful conversations in groups, and this really comes back to your question, Emily, it's not really your ability to talk. It's your ability to listen. Because there's nothing that other people like to hear more than the sound of their own voice. As Dale Carnegie taught us years ago, everyone's favorite subject is, if you think you know the answer, put it in the comments. Everyone's favorite subject is what? Tom Tom says me. Yep. Yep. Me, yourself. Yes, exactly. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. That's why if you can ask good questions, people love that. And this is where it comes back to being an introvert. As it turns out, you don't have to be a great talker. You don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to have particular insight. What you need to be able to do is ask good questions, show empathy, and have the ability to ask the second or the follow-up question. More about that in just a minute. Okay, so that was the fourth benefit, is that it develops your listening skills. It really does. And people feel honored. Number 5, it takes the stress out of hosting. I can't tell you how helpful this is. You know, so you're hosting a dinner party, and you feel like it's all on you for people to have a good time. When you ask the right question and employ the one conversation rule, it puts it right back on everybody else. Nobody feels burdened with it, but now all of a sudden it's like you're a symphony conductor. And I use this very metaphor in the blog post today. Instead of battle of the bands, we got this group at one end of the table that are, talking louder and louder, and this group at the other end, and they're talking louder and louder, and it's a battle of the bands, and it gets, really confusing, and there's this cacophony of sound. It's more like a symphony. And you as the conductor are bringing in the violins, bringing in the woodwinds, toning down the brass, whatever, but it takes the stress out of hosting the conversation because other people are playing the instruments. Okay, sixth benefit. It makes everyone feel really comfortable. Because as an introvert, I always feel the pressure when I'm in a situation like this and there's not a one conversation rule. I always feel the pressure to speak up or to say something, really smart or insightful. But when somebody else has asked the question, it's like they've set the agenda. And sometimes we even go around the table. And so I know that I'm going to have an opportunity here to say something, but that other people are talking, other people are participating. So it really helps everybody. And that's the beauty of it. So those are my 6 reasons. Now, I want to give you something that I didn't give in this particular post. Would you like some practical help on how to put this to work? We've been doing this for now almost a decade. And I think we've developed, Gail and I, my wife, have developed some facility with this. And I think we're pretty good at it. We still got a lot to learn. But I'd love to share with you 8 practical tips if you're up for it. You guys good? Okay, first, Fashion Nerd says, can you recap? Yes. So far what I've given you is 6 reasons why to practice the one conversation rule. Number 1, it gives everyone a chance to be heard. It gives everyone a chance to be heard. And yes, this can work with young people. Benefit number 2, it validates and honors everyone. Benefit number 3, it sets the stage for real connection. All you got to do is try this one time. Again, I double dog dare you. You see at the end of it if you feel more connected to the people at the table. Number 4, it develops listening skills because, as I said, it's more important to listen than to be able to talk. Number 5, it takes the stress out of hosting. This alone would be worth the price of admission. We look forward to dinner parties now in our home. Even as an introvert, I look forward to it because I know I'm going to have amazing conversations that are going to be transformational, not only in the lives of the people that are there, but in my own life. I love having dinner parties now. And then number 6, it makes everyone feel comfortable. Okay, so that's in my blog post today. You can find it on michaelhyatt.com, or here's the short link, thementor.tv/conversation1, like the numeral 1. Okay, and that'll take you, boom, right there. Okay, so Lynn says, please recap what one conversation is. The one conversation rule is this. It's the idea that there are not going to be any side conversations, but the whole table, whether it's 4 people, 6 people, or 12 people. And by the way, if you get beyond that, it's probably too big for a one conversation table. But everybody's going to have one conversation. What you talk about doesn't really matter. You can still go from topic to topic if you want, but there's one conversation, and everybody's participating. So one person talking at a time, everybody else is listening, and you just keep passing the baton like that, okay? So here's how to get started, and you can find this post. I wrote this post actually a few years ago, and you can find this at thementor.tv/conversation2, the numeral 2, okay? So somebody else is saying it's not in landscape. Joey, let me just encourage you, if you're not seeing it in landscape, it's probably because you don't have the new Periscope application downloaded. They just added this to the Periscope app last week. I don't know if it's updated for Android yet. That could be another problem. Or if you've downloaded it and you're still not seeing it in landscape, you may need to reboot your phone or shut it off and bring it back on. Okay? So here's some practical tips. If you want to have better dinner conversations, if you want to have more powerful conversations, whether it's at home, where to me it ought to be happening, but at work, this will connect you to clients, customers, vendors, your own employees, your teammates, unlike no other. Okay? So here's some practical tips. Number 1, and I've got 8 of these for you. Find a conducive environment. Now think about this. A lot of times when we're trying to find a restaurant, for example, to have a meaningful conversation, we don't give a lot of thought to the ambiance, do we? We tend to think of the food. Is it going to be great food? And how many times have you been in a restaurant that had great food, but it was so stinking noisy that you couldn't hear the person right across the table from you? Maybe I'm showing my age. But I like to be able to hear. I want it to be conducive. I don't want the servers to be constantly interrupting us and interrupting the flow of the conversation. So find a conducive environment. That's job number one. I'm willing to sacrifice even the quality of the food a little bit in order to get a good environment that's conducive to conversation. Okay, that's number one. Number two, introduce the one conversation rule to the people at the table. And let me tell you again how Lucy Swindoll did it with us and how I do this when people come to my home. I simply welcome everybody, thank them for coming to dinner, and say, I only have one rule at my table, and the rule is that we have one conversation. And I've got some questions that are prepared. The conversation can take a different turn. We can take it wherever we want. But my only request is that we don't have side conversations, but we just have one conversation. And for some of you, this will be brand new, and it'll be an experiment. For some of you, you've been at my table before. You know how this works, but I promise it's going to be awesome. So be confident. Introduce it in just that way. That's usually all the instruction that people need. Number three, prepare a couple. I don't think you need more than about 3 for a 2-hour dinner conversation. Prepare a couple of open-ended questions, okay? So you don't want closed-end questions, the yes or no, or, pick your favorite out of these 5 things. You want an open-ended question where people can just ask or just answer from their heart. So, for example, here's one that I've asked before. What's your idea of the perfect vacation? Now, when people are talking about this, they reveal a lot about themselves. Plus, you get some great vacation ideas. Here's another one. If you could design your ideal job, what would it look like? That's an open-ended question. If you could design your ideal job, what would it look like? So much fun to talk about stuff like that. Or here's another one. What is your very favorite thing about your spouse? This is subtle. This is sneaky. This actually gets people affirming what they love about their spouse. And it's a great marriage building tool too, but it's very subtle. Because oftentimes when couples get together, they're complaining about their spouse, but to get them to focus and to notice what their favorite thing is really fun. Or here's another one. If you could spend a day with anyone on the planet, who would it be? So again, just examples of open-ended questions, okay? Now, here's where the magic happens. So those are the first 3 steps. Again, let me just review. Find a conducive environment. Number 2, introduce the rule. Number 3, prepare a couple of open-ended questions. Here's number 4. This is what separates the pros from the amateurs, okay? Ask the second question or the follow-up question. Sometimes we'll throw the question out there and we'll be so busy thinking about what we want to say in response that we're not paying attention to the conversation. So I like to discipline myself to ask the second question. So I've got to really be lost in the story, lost in their answer, so I can ask this second question. Now here's some examples of second questions. How did it feel when that happened? And I mean, asking that with real sincerity because you're curious. How did that feel when that happened? Here's another second question. Could you elaborate on that? Or just sometimes I just say more about that. Maybe it wasn't clear. I didn't really understand what they're saying. And so I just ask them to elaborate on that. Here's another second question you can ask. Why do you think that is important to you? What is it about that person that really attracts you? Or, I love this one. Do you think you would have answered the same way 5 years ago? But you see what this does? It's like peeling an onion back one layer at a time. The first question gets you a little bit deep, but that second question, the third question, where you drive the conversation deeper. And here's what's really cool about this. It becomes contagious. If you as the host are curious, it'll create curiosity in your guests. And now all of a sudden, everyone is excavating everyone else's heart, trying to learn more about them because they're genuinely interested. And that is the foundation for connection and for relationships. Okay? Number 5, draw those out who are reluctant to speak. So important. There's going to be some people that just kind of hang back. And I like to call them by name. Bonnie, what do you think? Or, Carl, we haven't heard from you. What do you think? And I just ask them. Sometimes the most powerful answers, the most powerful insight, the most stimulating information comes from the people who would never volunteer it. They have to be called out. And they're going to be comfortable doing it, I promise. So that's number 5. Number 6 is pay attention to people's physical needs. Now, here's what I mean by that. If it's a dinner party in my home, part of my role as the host is to launch the conversation, and I don't want people distracted by their physical needs. You know, if their wine glass is empty or their water's empty or they need a second helping, I'm going to take the initiative to get up from the table and get that. So all this conversation is happening in a free-flowing environment, but where I'm serving them by attending to their physical needs so they can stay in the conversation. Critically important. Number 7. Okay, this maybe should be obvious. Number 1, by the way, was to find a conducive environment. Number 7, do more listening than talking. I know sometimes, particularly from a traditional kind of background where you've done this in a traditional way, as the host, you may feel the pressure to be doing most of the talking. No. You should be doing most of the listening. Put the spotlight on your guests. Let them shine. Ask them questions. Make them the centerpiece, not yourself. So listen more than you talk. And then number 8, affirm people even if you disagree with them. I'm going to tell you a little trick. I know there are a lot of people that love to surround themselves with people that agree with everything that they say. That's not me. I learn more from people that I disagree with, people that have political viewpoints that are different than mine, people who have religious viewpoints that are different than mine. I love being around people with diverse backgrounds and different opinions. But you got to be careful. You don't want this to degenerate into an argument or a debate or who can be the smartest or who can one-up the other person. Instead, when I get somebody that disagrees with me, then here's the kind of thing I want to say. That's fascinating. Help me understand how you came to that conclusion. I mean, just to open up the conversation and again, stay curious. If you can stay curious, the conversation will not degenerate into a disagreement. And when you listen to somebody respectfully, then you kind of earn the right to say, you know, I don't think I agree with that, but let me kind of give you my perspective on it. You know, you earn the right to be able to give your perspective. But so often, and we see this all the time in the public sphere, don't we? Where people are talking over the top of each other. You know, people are preaching each other. Nobody's listening to anybody. And what does that result in? Polarization. That's modern America today, by the way. And it's extremely frustrating. It's not helpful. If there's one thing that I wished every politician could grow, it's a set of ears. They need to listen. I mean, honestly. Okay, so we got a few minutes for questions. Thanks for listening to me go on and on there. But I'm passionate about this topic. I've seen this transform our family. I've seen it transform our friendships. I've seen it transform our company. All this can be so helpful. Okay, so could I give you some examples of good questions? Yep. So here's some open-ended questions. What's the best book you've read in the last 12 months and why? Okay, this just gives people an opportunity to shine, to talk about a book they've read. By the way, you probably shouldn't ask that question in a room full of non-readers because all you're going to do is embarrass them. Here's another one. Looking back over your life, what would you describe as your most proudest moment? You know, that's a good question to ask too. Okay? So here are some examples. If you have a question, give me your name in all caps, 2 question marks, and then your question. That way I can call you out by name. Neil says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Yes. Stephen Covey, 101. Kathy said, this is a great topic. I think you've got another book coming on. Yeah, maybe. Cooking Outside said, the wheels are spinning. I'm going to do this with our brand new board of directors. I'm excited. This will make you a hero with your brand new board of directors. I promise. Neil says, exactly. Yeah, here's another one. What was your favorite childhood memory? Fantastic. Great question. Write these down as you think about them. Sarah says, great point. Making people feel comfortable doesn't mean trying to be smarter. No, that's right. That usually doesn't make people feel comfortable. In fact, it makes them retreat into their shell more. Weston, how to shut down an overly talkative guest. Just don't call on them. Call on other people. Let them talk. Sometimes, I've had to do this a couple of times, and it is awkward. I'm not going to lie. Is just say, okay, thanks. Awesome. Jim, what do you think? And just redirect the conversation. So this takes you being a little bit assertive. This is why I like to lead these conversations on my home turf, because I own it. This is my space. I'm the conductor, and we're going to do it my way. Interesting questions where there's not a simple yes or no, but it's not an interrogation. Absolutely can't be an interrogation. Georgia says, do you ever enjoy political or religious conversations? Can they be valuable? They can. But you got to lay some ground rules. Some of the ground rules I would lay in a political conversation is, look, for a change, let's not try to prove our point of view, but let's try to understand the people that oppose our point of view, what makes them tick. Let's seek first to understand. Yeah, Ethan says, people will remember how you made them feel better than what you spoke about. So true. Eternity Sunshine says, my son Cody is sitting with me and listening. He says hello. Good words. Hi to you. Any other questions? Beth says, great insight, thank you. Do you motivate or do you engage, and how do you differ these? I'm not sure I understand that question. Sorry. Mike, what do you think of NLP? What I think of it, I like. And here's what I don't know that much about it, but I know that our language is very, very important. Our thoughts are extremely important, and our language reveals our thoughts, and ultimately it becomes our actions. So, yeah, I think the more you can be thoughtful about the language that you use, the more impact it has on yourself and on your world. What's your purpose here, Mike? I'm not sure if that's directed to me or somebody else. Georgia, do you agree that sometimes respectful, heated debate can be valuable? Yeah, I would say yes. I think sometimes it probably can, but it has to be done in the right context where there's respect to the other person. The kind of name calling and stuff that we're seeing in the political arena right now on both sides of the aisle, to me, is just unacceptable. I think it needs to be about ideas, and it needs to be respectful towards the people that we disagree with. My own view is they're made in the image of God just like I am. They deserve my respect. Gene says, what about internet conversation? I think it can be exactly the same thing. I think you've got to establish some ground rules. Look, if you don't establish ground rules, if you don't create a vision for a different kind of conversation, people are going to fall back into the tried and true. They're going to do what they've always done, and it's not very effective. It's not very meaningful. That's why sometimes when you leave a dinner party or a business meeting, you go, I don't know, there was something about that just didn't resonate with me. Or I just felt like we got off track there. So like everything else, and this is why I call my company Intentional Leadership, be intentional. Be intentional with your conversations. Be intentional with everything you do. Okay, one more question, and then I've got to run. I know you do too. Anybody else? Who's going to have the last question? Paola, this is so thoughtful and helpful. Thank you. Thank you. My wife Gail says, hi, babe. Hey, babe. Paul, I've heard you talk about the game before. Do you recommend playing at a dinner? Yeah, that's. I think it's the one I'm thinking about. We've got a set of cards on the table, and I can't remember what they're called, but the cards have questions on them too, and you can order these from Amazon. I should have looked up that link. Thank you, Michael. I am very introverted, and the concepts makes me want to entertain more. I'm a total introvert, and I love to entertain when I put these rules in place. Okay. I don't really think I've gotten that question, but I think we're good. Guys, I hope this is a great day. I don't know how much of it you have left. Depends on where you're living in the world. It may be a few hours. It may be half a day. It may be the full day. But regardless, I want you to think of it as a blank canvas. It can be anything you decide to make it. And I want to encourage you not just to have a good day, but to make it a great day. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks.